Tonight, abduction nightmare. 3 young women targeted by a man accused of trying to lure them into his car at Whittlesea. Exclusive, a brave boy viciously attacked by a rogue kangaroo says he thought he was going to die. Israel strikes back. Explosions heard as missiles hit military targets across Iran. A heartbroken family pays tribute to the selfless husband and wife killed by a runaway truck near Warrnambool. Queen Bee and the VP. Beyonce provides the backing track as she campaigns with Kamala Harris. And dressed to thrill off the track as Via Sistina storms home to win the Cox Plate.
This is Melbourne's 9 News with Peter Hitchener.
Good evening. A woman has bravely fought off a man who tried to force her into his car during an attempted abduction at Whittlesea. The stranger is also accused of trying to coax a 15-year-old girl and her cousin into his ute moments earlier. Crime reporter Gillian Lantouris with this exclusive report.
In broad daylight, a terrifying attempted abduction unfolds. A stranger grabs hold of a young woman and tries to drag her into his car along Forest Street in Whittlesea. The 27-year-old managed to break free and run from the attacker, who then takes off in his ute around 6:30 last night. The woman's screams heard by neighbours.
Pretty disgusted. It's pretty concerning.
Just 20 minutes earlier, 15-year-old Ali and her younger cousin were playing with their scooters along nearby Oakbank Boulevard when the same man approached, asking for directions to King Lake.
He was really close to us, and then he said, "Come have a look in the back of my car and have a look at the maps," and he opened the back door for us, and that's when me and Zoe left.
A Good Samaritan walked the girls home.
Very scared, and I felt very nauseous after it.
Absolutely horrified. It's just so upsetting to think that something like this is happening in our community.
Ali and her cousin managed to get away unharmed, but the Whittlesea community is now on high alert.
My daughter couldn't sleep last night. We were all beside ourselves.
Around 9 o'clock this morning, police pulled over that ute along the Midland Highway in Shepparton. The driver, a 39-year-old man from Mill Park, was arrested and is being questioned over the incidents.
It's horrible the way it's affected us when he didn't even get them, let alone to think what would have happened if he got one of them in the car. It's terrible. Yeah, it's sickening.
Gillian Lantouris, 9 News.
A 12-year-old boy has survived a vicious kangaroo attack in his backyard northeast of Melbourne. Phoenix Bond says the animal pinned him down for minutes before a neighbour heard his cries for help. He spoke exclusively to Julia Passarelli.
Phoenix Bond had blood streaming from his head and suffered a massive gash to his right thigh, inflicted by the claws of a kangaroo, tearing at him through his onesie.
I just feel pretty traumatised, really scared.
The 12-year-old was in his kangaroo ground backyard looking at a mob of roos. When a large male bounded towards him, Phoenix tried to run away but slipped.
The kangaroo came on me and it was kind of scratching my back and my head. It kind of just felt like something was kind of karate chopping me over and over on my back.
The Monday morning attack lasted a couple of minutes before a neighbour heard Phoenix's screams for help.
When I was on the ground, I was like, oh, if no one gets out to me, I'm going to be dead.
It could have got his neck, it could have got his face, it could have got an artery, and because I was inside, I would not have heard him if it wasn't for our neighbour that heard him screaming out.
Once confronted, the roo hopped away. Phoenix was rushed to the Austin Hospital where he needed surgery on his head and leg.
Because the gash on his leg was so deep, right down to the muscle, they had to do plastic surgeries. They couldn't just stitch it up there.
Phoenix will be back in hospital next week to get his stitches removed, but there's no doubt he'll be telling his wild tale for many years to come.
I'm so lucky that it didn't get deeper into my neck, and one more minute and it got deeper into my head, it probably would have been over.
Julia Passarelli, 9 News.
3 men are dead after 2 light planes collided mid-air and crashed into dense bushland in Sydney's southwest. Locals ran to the site to help, but were forced back by fire.
We just heard a big bang, and then we just seen a lot of big black smoke coming from the back of our property. It's really frightening. To know that it's just happened right at the back here.
It's still unclear how the collision occurred, but the Australian Transport Safety Bureau is investigating. The world was warned it would retaliate, and now it has. Israel today carried out a series of airstrikes against Iran in a 4-hour assault, less than a month after Tehran unleashed its own barrage. Edward Godfrey has the latest.
For weeks, Israel swore it would retaliate. Today, those threats were realised.
The Israel Defense Forces is conducting precise strikes on military targets in Iran.
Missiles seen in the skies over the capital, Tehran. The sound of explosions piercing the night. Many were taken out by aerial defence systems, but Israeli officials claim roughly 20 targets were hit, including missile production complexes and air defence sites. Iran acknowledged multiple military bases came under fire, but insisted the strikes caused limited damage.
The regime in Iran and its proxies in the region have been relentlessly attacking Israel since October 7th on 7 fronts. The State of Israel has the right and the duty to respond.
This is just the latest round in the escalating conflict between the nations. It's been 25 days since Iran delivered its ballistic missile barrage that sent Israelis scrambling into bomb shelters. Prime Minister Netanyahu gathered with top military officials at an Air Force base in Kiryat today to coordinate the response, concluding the operation approximately 4 hours after it began.
The Israel Defense Forces has fulfilled its mission. If the regime in Iran were to make the mistake of beginning a new round of escalation, we will be obligated to respond.
Iranian state media downplayed today's attack, at first remaining vague about the source of the explosions, then labelling them insignificant. The United States says it was told well in advance of Israel's plans, the assault beginning as its Secretary of State landed back in Washington. It was Antony Blinken's 11th visit to the Middle East since the war began, to again appeal for a ceasefire deal that seems as far away as ever. At the Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza, the situation is desperate. Staff here say the facility itself has become a target, and Israeli troops have entered twice. Located in the Jabalia area, where Israeli forces say Hamas operates.
The Israeli military is subjecting an entire population to bombing, siege and starvation. Palestinian armed groups also reportedly continue to operate from amongst civilians, including places of shelter, putting civilians in harm's way.
Heavy blows also continuing in Lebanon. This is where 3 journalists were killed by strikes in the country's southeast. One worked for a Hezbollah-affiliated TV network. Despite Hezbollah's leadership being pulverised, rockets still penetrate Israeli territory. In the north, 8 were injured, 2 critically, by shrapnel. In London, Edward Godfrey, 9 News.
A 70-year-old truckie who ploughed into a home near Warrnambool, killing an elderly couple, is yet to be questioned by police. The victims' loved ones say they're totally devastated. Gillian Lantouris again.
Carmel and Jim Madden lived for their community, volunteering at local footy games for Lifeline and the Lions Club. Their deaths now felt by many.
It's been really hard. It's like losing parents.
The couple were in their bedroom when a tipper truck ploughed into their Tower Hill home yesterday morning. Jim would typically be out early in the stables looking after his racehorses, but returned home to check on his 80-year-old wife who had just had surgery when they were killed.
Yeah, it's just a tragic way to die.
They leave behind 3 heartbroken children who say they are devastated. Jim and Carmel devoted their life to their family and have given us all so many opportunities, and we're immensely proud of us all.
As the Madden family said yesterday, you know, we want to keep moving on and make the world a better place, and that was an incredible message.
A legacy and a love for racing they hope lives on through the racehorse, born on their farm just moments after their deaths.
And we hope that this little foal becomes a racehorse winner for Jimmy and Carmel.
The 70-year-old truckie remains at Warrnambool Base Hospital with minor injuries. The Portland man will be questioned by police as they continue to investigate how this happened. It's understood the 70-year-old doesn't have a criminal history relating to driving. Police are exploring whether he suffered a medical episode at the time of the crash and are waiting for the results of a blood test, which could take up to a week. Gillian Lantouris, 9 News.
Anthony Albanese is on his way home from the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting after he was appointed the honorary chief of a village in Samoa. King Charles also bid farewell to the Pacific nation with a poignant message about his mortality. More from Liz Daniels.
If the Pacific is one big happy family, then Anthony Albanese was playing the part of favourite uncle. The people of Satapuala decked their village in green and gold and dubbed it Australia for the week. Thank you for the warm welcome. As this island nation hosts the countries of the Commonwealth.
Here we go, Australia!
Received with honour
Australia
and ancient ritual. Anthony Albanese, first Australian Prime Minister and now a Samoan village chief. Bestowed the title in a kava ceremony.
This will be a permanent connection between Australia and beautiful Samoa.
Proud people, and that's been on display all week. But the welcome they gave our Prime Minister really displayed their warmth and hospitality as well. And Australia being embraced by the Pacific is key as it looks to counter China. Tight security for this meeting, the first operation coordinated under the Albanese Orchestrated Pacific Policing Initiative, AFP, among 46 officers deployed from 11 countries as part of a multinational squad now available for events and emergencies.
That a security threat to any one of us is a threat to all of us.
While we're from different countries, we have different cultures. We're bonded by the skills and the way that police operate.
And this regional family doesn't mind a ribbing.
We have a development squad and we call them the Wallabies.
Tonight as the Prime Minister heads for home, it's a wrap on the royal tour to the King and Queen's final stop, the local village that became Little Britain.
I hope that I survive long enough to come back again.
The monarch having made his mark on the global push for climate action. Liz Daniels, 9 News.
The Treasurer has completed talks in Washington, D.C., where he met finance ministers from across the globe at the G20 and International Monetary Fund. Jim Chalmers says the world's inflation problem is easing, but still blamed international factors for Australia's sticky situation.
We're confident that when it comes to global inflation, the worst is behind us, but we are cautious because of the risks of escalating tensions in the Middle East.
He also held talks with key economic advisers on both sides of US politics ahead of next month's election. For the first time, superstar Beyoncé has publicly thrown her support behind Kamala Harris in her race for the White House. The headline act at a rally in Texas didn't sing, but instead pleaded with women to fight for abortion rights. Jonathan Kersley reports.
Global superstars taking centre stage in this presidential campaign.
Houston, you've already had a hand in creating destiny.
Queen Bee in her hometown.
H-Town.
Beyoncé, the soundtrack to Kamala Harris's historic run. Tonight, the headline act offering her support to women across the country.
I'm not here as a celebrity. I'm not here as a politician. I'm here as a mother.
At the heart of this rally, reproductive rights. Kamala Harris calls Texas ground zero in a national fight against abortion bans.
And we need you. Your freedom is your God-given right. Are y'all ready to add your voice to the new American song?
Then came the woman they want to call Madam President.
Freedom is not to be given. It is not to be bestowed. It is ours by right, and we are prepared to fight for it.
A fight she's taking to Donald Trump, who was also campaigning in the Lone Star State.
We're like a garbage can for the rest of the world.
Courting male voters with an appearance on America's top podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience.
You cannot be voting for Kamala. Kamala, you're not a Kamala person, I know you.
Before arriving 3 hours late to a rally in Michigan.
Kamala, you're fired. Get the hell out of here. You're useless. You're horrible.
In a new poll, 49% of Americans have said Donald Trump is a fascist.
It's got a new thing going. You know, I think now they're calling me a dictator.
He said he wanted to be that dictator, and he said he would do it during his presidency. He's not just saying it, people. He's promising.
This election is going to be won in battleground states, including this one here in Pennsylvania, where campaigns have poured in so much time and money to try and get 1 foot in the door of the White House. Ultimately, all roads there could lead through this very state. Right now, this race is a dead heat. In Scranton, Pennsylvania, Jonathan Kersley, 9 News.
Via Sistina has set aside a week of drama for jockey James McDonald and master trainer Chris Waller to romp home in the Cox Plate. It was a popular victory on a glorious day for punters and trendsetters at Moonee Valley. Isabel Quinlan was there.
Spring racing in full bloom. A sold-out crowd of 22,000 punters galloped through the gates of Moonee Valley, eager to get their spot trackside for the 104th Cox Plate.
We want to see the horses as close as we can. We want to barrack for the winners.
Some travelled great distances.
We live in Perth now. We've just come over for the weekend for the races.
For an opportunity to be amongst the action.
Both of us love going to the races, and we thought, well, the Cox Plate, we've got to tick it off the bucket list.
The sun's shining and it's an excuse for us to get dressed up and have a few bevies.
When it came to fashions on the field, the ladies dressed to impress, but nothing was outshining the gents today.
Excited for the day and hopefully we're back a few winners.
I always have to have a bit of a novelty suit every time I come or do my hair or do something. So I've got the Joker suit on. Green ties.
This is just my party suit. I don't know anything about horses, so I thought I'd just come here and have a good time.
Despite only stepping off a plane less than 24 hours ago, Geelong young gun Ollie Dempsey refused to let jet lag get the better of him, claiming there's no place he would rather be than trackside.
Just the environment and everything about it, and actually the races as well. Personally, I just love watching them, and everyone gets to them, and so many people here, which is so exciting.
Olympian Shayna Jack couldn't agree more.
I love being with horses. I personally do ride, so I have that passion and that love for them in the first place.
For the true hunter, the Cox Plate is the pinnacle of the spring racing carnival, and with the $5 million race, once again attracting a top-class field, it's anyone's bet who will bring home the glory.
But in the end...
And James McDonald, a century of the very best, Via Sistina by 7 lengths.
She's just an absolute star. I'm so lucky to be part of it.
Some very happy racegoers this evening.
And we're live now to Isabel at Moonee Valley. Izzy, it's just a taste, isn't it, of what's in store for the Spring Racing Carnival?
Yes, Pete, it's fair to say there's a full stable of events to come. Starting from next Saturday, Flemington will come alive for Derby Day, the curtain raiser to what's expected to be a jam-packed week full of racing, fashion and entertainment for the Melbourne Cup Carnival. And the best news of all, Pete, is that you can watch it all free here on 9 and 9 Now.
OK, thank you, Isabel Quinlan. And now with a look ahead to some more sport, Nathan Curry.
Thank you, Pete. It is all about James McDonald tonight. From Tuesday's fall to his third straight Cox Plate, we'll hear from the man himself after the legendary win.
She won like winks. She blended them and, yeah, it's just a phenomenal performance.
Also tonight, the Matildas with a lot of work to do after their first hit out since Paris. Life just gets better and better for Dyson Daniels in Atlanta. And how's this? A walk-off grand slam to win Game 1 of the World Series. Now, that is the first time that has ever happened in World Series history, so can't wait to show you a bit more of that later, Pete.
Good work. Thank you, Nathan. And next in Melbourne's 9 News, vape bust. $8 million worth seized from a warehouse in Melbourne's east. A new system allowing renters to take their bond with them when they move. Devastating winds, landslides and flash floods as a tropical storm batters the Philippines. And a year in the making, inside the incredible mission to resupply Antarctica. An $8 million haul of illegal vapes has been seized from a warehouse in Box Hill South. Officers raided the property on Middleborough Road around 4 a.m. on Thursday and during their search uncovered 200,000 devices. They were loaded into boxes and handed over to the TGA. So far, no arrests have been made. Renters will no longer have to stump up thousands of dollars for a bond every time they move. They'll be able to transfer the money between properties once the government completes an IT overhaul. Mark Santomartino explains.
Aaron and Taylor are planning their wedding and don't want to worry about finding money for a bond when they have to move out of their Mount Waverley home.
If we can continue to keep the savings in the savings and not in new bonds, that would be helpful.
Labor promised renters they would be able to transfer bonds from property to property last year. Today, the minister announced that will happen by 2026 after a major IT overhaul.
A rehashed announcement from over a year ago. It's an absolute insult to renters who are drowning in rent payments, who are living in fear of their next rent increase.
Gabrielle Williams couldn't put a price on that upgrade or the cost of setting up Rental Disputes Resolution Victoria, a new service that will open to tenants from the middle of next year, with the goal of solving maintenance and repair issues, bond claims and rent increases before they get to VCAT.
They're often there because there hasn't been the early intervention, because there hasn't been an accessible pathway for dispute resolution. And what's been missing in that puzzle is this.
It's leaky roofs, it's windows that won't shut, it's all of the things that you can imagine.
The service will be free, and while it will require landlords and renters to reach agreements in good faith, it will also have the power to issue binding consent orders, which can then be enforced by a court.
Because the reality is most parties don't want to be caught in a protracted dispute. It's not good for renters, it's not good for rental providers.
If Labor really cared about renters, they would end unfair evictions, they would end unlimited rent increases.
Since March, landlords and agents have been fined a combined $450,000 for failing to advertise properties at a fixed price or failing to lodge a bond. Mark Santomartino, 9 News.
The Philippines has been devastated by a tropical storm that claimed at least 76 lives when it roared through. The typhoon triggered landslides and widespread flooding, forcing more than 300,000 people from their homes. The system also brought wind gusts as strong as 115 kilometres an hour, knocking pedestrians off their feet. An incredible rescue has played out in Ohio. Emergency crews saved a woman trapped in the basement of a burning home.
You're good. Here you go. You're good. Try to get her out. Go. Get out.
She was pulled to safety just in time before a trip to hospital for smoke inhalation. Every 12 months, a vessel carrying a year's supply of food and fuel departs Hobart for the Australian-run research stations in Antarctica. As Alex Hankey discovered, 100 new skilled employees are on board the ship, ready to keep the world's most isolated workplace running.
This time of year in Antarctica, the sun struggles to set. But on board Aussie icebreaker Noyina today, it is the dawn of a new season.
We've been chatting to the team that's down at Davis Station. They've been there for 12 months now, and they're pretty excited for us to turn up.
2 weeks ago in Hobart, the ship was loaded with 70 tonnes of supplies for its once-a-year delivery. Enough food, water and fuel to keep the Australian-run Davis Research Station going for the next 12 months. And there was room on the ship for a few of the finer things.
We've definitely got a large quantity of ice cream, chocolate, coffee and of course the all-essential toilet paper.
But also on board a whole new crew, some 100 workers from tradies to scientists ready to swap with the existing teams.
This voyage will have science teams that will be heading down to Davis and Mawson stations. They'll be undertaking seabird monitoring programs.
Top of the to-do list, a new water treatment facility.
We're working on a reverse osmosis desalination plant, a new building which will replace the existing building which is now at its end of life.
It converts salt water to fresh drinking water.
We need to produce fresh water using salt water via a desalination plant and then store that water for most of the year actually.
A tough gig in a tough environment, but the views make it all worthwhile. Alex Sankey, 9 News.
Mimi Becker's here now with the latest on our weather. Mimi, it's been an absolutely beautiful day.
It has, Pete. Plenty of sunshine to start our weekend, but it was a fresh morning. From a low of just 6 degrees, the city warmed up to reach 23 late this afternoon with light winds. Across the suburbs, it was an even cooler start, down to just 1 degree at Coldstream before it managed to warm up to 21. The chilly morning was due to a high-pressure cell with a very dry air mass over Victoria. Well, this trough will move across Victoria into us tomorrow, bringing some cloudy conditions, and the temperature is expected to remain warm though, and I'll have all those details later in the bulletin, Pete.
OK, thank you very much, Mimi. Up next, Queenslanders go to the polls. Political editor Charles Croucher with the latest. Why BHP is set to pay $45 billion to the Brazilian government, and special paramedic training, giving a voice to some of Victoria's most vulnerable patients.
9 News, brought to you by Hyundai. Have you tried it? Now you can.
It's just over half an hour until the polls close in the Queensland state election. The Liberal National Party is tipped to return to office, ending almost a decade of Labor rule. Here's Charles Croucher.
With a smile and a sausage, this likely Stephen Miles' last act as Premier.
Tell us if it's any good.
A frantic final day, 36 seats in 36 hours, using whatever transport available to outrun an unpopular predecessor and a tiring government.
Time will tell, I suppose, Josh, but I'll certainly know that I couldn't have done anything more.
LNP leader David Crucifili ran his campaign focused on crime and costs, while fending off concerns abortion could be recriminalised if he wins tonight.
This really is a pivotal point in this state's history, and I'm urging Queenslanders to, it's time, vote for a fresh start.
With the Greens, the Katters, One Nation and Independents, a vote that looked simple a month ago could be heading for a complicated conclusion.
We're very excited to be able to smash apart the two-party system.
So Joe Bjelke-Petersen used to say, what's good for Queensland is good for Australia. Well, tonight we find out what Queenslanders at least think is good for them. This is the state of play at the moment. Labor have a lead, but the overwhelming feeling tonight is the LNP will get the 12 seats they need and win power from opposition at an election for just the second time in nearly 70 years. The other thing we're going to keep an eye on is these Greens seats here. Will the Greens continue their march, particularly in cities, ahead of the election next year? Labor saw the first crack in its big red wall across mainland Australia in the Northern Territory. Expect another big crack tonight.
9 years after causing one of the country's worst ever environmental disasters, 2 mining companies have reached a settlement deal with the Brazilian government. BHP and Vale will pay nearly $45 billion to compensate for the 2015 Mariana Dam collapse. The disaster released toxic waste into a river, killing 19 people. Thousands of paramedics are being taught how to properly communicate with non-verbal patients. The program, funded by the NDIS, hopes to minimise the trauma suffered by Victorians like Marie Ireland. She spoke to Mark Santomartino.
Typing a full sentence can take minutes for Marie Ireland, whose worst fear was realised when she was admitted to hospital with pneumonia and separated from her light-writer, unable to respond when a nurse told her to lie down or die.
That was one of the scariest and lonely nights of my life.
Determined to never go through that again, the advocate, now in her 60s, teamed up with Scope Australia, a disability support service, to teach healthcare workers how to speak with the 20,000 patients like Marie who call for help every year.
This is absolutely an everyday event, so we need to treat it as an everyday event so that people with disabilities and people with communication issues can be respected, heard and understood.
David Walton, who has worked as a paramedic for more than 2 decades, was one of the first to complete the voluntary online training modules made available to Ambulance Victoria earlier this year.
I knew it would work, but I didn't really know how well it would work. I was very, very surprised. And it's so simple. You flick through the book together, so you're almost working as a team to get to the bottom of what's going on.
Hundreds of healthcare workers have already completed the training and have booklets just like this one to help them out on the road, where In a high-pressure situation, asking questions that can be answered with a simple yes or no is critical to getting information quickly.
I do understand they need to respond quickly, but if they could speak as they do to everybody, that would be a start.
South Australia's ambulance service is also on board, and Marie hopes hospitals follow suit.
You expect health departments and hospitals to have wheelchair access. You should expect them to also have communication access.
People should assume competence of the person, be patient, give the person sufficient time to say what they want and respond appropriately.
Mark Santomartino, 9 News.
Still to come tonight, a flood emergency in Moorabbin. 100 residents forced from their homes after a water pipe burst. Alice Stoltz shows off an opulent Toorak home in this week's Domain Property Report, and how Beth the Builder is paving the way for other women in the construction industry. A rude wake-up call for more than 100 Moorabbin residents when a water pipe burst and flooded a first-floor apartment on Station Street. Fire crews arrived just after 3 o'clock this morning following multiple 000 calls. They shut off the water supply to the building, leaving one occupant with a costly clean-up. Our property report is coming on now with Alice Stoltz from Domain. Good evening, Alice. A huge Super Saturday.
It sure was, Pete, and there were some sellers who certainly enjoyed the spoils of it. At an auction in Fitzroy, we saw an interesting result take place after this very unique home went to the market. In a crowd of around 150 people, it played out. Now, the vendors knocked back a pre-auction offer in the week due to strong interest in this home, and they elected to have their moment in the sun today, and they certainly got it with 5 registered bidders. 3 parties battled it out, and the property sold for $2.9 million, $425,000 more than the reserve. Now, all up across Melbourne today, there were 1,782 auctions and a preliminary clearance rate of 62.6%. Pretty strong given that volume of auctions that we saw. The most expensive reported sale was a double-storey Victorian home in Hawthorn, which went for $6.42 million. And the most affordable was a ground floor unit in Carnegie that sold for just over $247,000. Now, if you're after something lavish, have a look at our house of the week. This 5-bedroom home took 5 years of planning, building and sourcing from all over the world. Now, the entrance hall features a hand-blown glass dome, a very opulent staircase and an incredible wall mouldings all throughout the house. Now, there's a stone and brass kitchen which conceals a service kitchen, a good way to hide the mess. There's also a cinema, gym, tennis court and an elegant glass conservatory. And if you look hard enough, there is a secret door that lets you slip into a little private bar like a speakeasy in your own home, Pete.
How about that? Thank you, Alice Stoltz from Domain. A young Melbourne woman is doing her bit to realign the gender imbalance in the building and construction industry. Beth Morrissey is defying the odds by running a thriving business employing and subcontracting female carpenters and electricians. Joe Hall met her.
Let's just call her Beth the Builder. And can she fix it? Yes, she can.
You've got a cavity sliding door here, so don't walk through that wall, please, Joe.
With a carpenter father, Beth Morrissey was destined to be a tradie.
When I was a little kid, I always told my dad that I wanted to be an engineer so that I could be his boss.
And a boss she is. With 11 years in the industry, she's now in charge at Beth Builds.
I haven't had a problem with word of mouth so far, so I must be doing something right.
On this Greensboro site, a major renovation. We were looking at 6 female tradies.
Yeah, this is a record for us.
There's Ruby Robinson, Beth's second-year apprentice chippy.
So good working with 2 other females. It's definitely not common within the industry, but I think I'm pretty lucky.
Her colleague is Tash Eastman-Nagel, who'll next week become a qualified carpenter after a 4-year apprenticeship.
It's awesome. It's so nice working in a team of women. It really feels like we're on the frontier of something.
Joining Beth's team, subcontractor Lani Verdi, who runs her own crew of female sparkies.
Would love to see more of this going on. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I started the business, is to support women going through their apprenticeship.
I was really keen to get her and her team involved, being that they're all women. So this is actually our first project that we're working on together.
Goals being reached. Remember Beth mentioned wanting to be her dad's boss? Well, that dream has come true.
He just brings such a wealth of knowledge.
She's very strong-willed.
She's a strong woman.
Beth's father says his daughter needed that determination to survive early years in a male-dominated field.
It's been really difficult, but she's making a great fist of it. She's doing really well. She's breaking down a lot of barriers.
There are more than 1.3 million Australians working in the construction industry, and just 14% are women. Only 3% of electricians are females, and only 1% of carpenters and joiners.
If you can see it, you can be it. So I think people in schools, maybe there's a bit of a gap there that needs to be bridged.
Beth says she mainly started her own business to create her dream worksite, one where tradies can be themselves and don't have to be one of the boys.
You can still be, you know, really feminine or really girly. At the moment I don't have them, but usually I have glittery nails on my hands and I have a hot pink nail bag. So, you know, it doesn't matter what you're like outside of work. You can still be yourself at work, and if people see that, then more people might give it a try.
Jo Hull, 9 News.
Now returning with sport, Nathan Curry.
Thanks so much, Pete. Coming up after the break, we'll hear from Chris Waller and James McDonald as J-Mac stands and delivers to make it 3 Cox Plates on the trot. Plus a tough start for the new Matildas coach and a history-making hit in the World Series. Three-time Cox Plate winning jockey James McDonald has revealed he thought his chances of riding today were all over after Tuesday's track work fall. Despite that, he and Chris Waller have turned things around to claim a legendary win with Via Sistina. Up before it was over, James McDonald knew a third straight Cox Plate was his.
And James McDonald has victory of the very best. Via Sistina by 7 lengths.
His 100th Group 1 win, Tuesday's fall now in the past.
Forget what happened Tuesday. It's just a good horse. Yeah, I've just done my job to prove it.
The Valley turned it on again with a packed crowd ready to go.
Racing in the Cox Plate.
Pride of Jenny went early.
Pride of Jenny went to the front.
But then came J-Mac.
But Via Sistina storms away with 150 to go.
Via Sistina didn't just cruise home, she broke Winx's track record by almost 2 seconds.
She won like Winx. She blended them and yeah, it's just a phenomenal performance.
It's an incredible turnaround from when McDonald was thrown during track work on Tuesday morning.
I thought our hopes were doomed. When I popped myself up and looked at and watched her gallop away, if looks could tell a story, we were stuffed.
The way the team has been able to recover from there will be discussed for years to come, but for now, Chris Waller is putting it all into perspective.
They put the Cox Plates on every year. If she didn't make it, who cares? She's alive and James is alive.
Not only is he alive, he's joined the greats and can celebrate arguably the greatest Cox Plate win. Interim Matildas coach Tom Samani has plenty of work ahead of him to return the side to the top of women's football. Australia has slumped to 15th in the world, and the new boss says their defence is a mess after a draw against Switzerland. Mark Gottlieb reports.
An old face leading the new Matildas era, and it looked like interim coach Tom Samani's first game back in charge would be a successful one. Caitlin Ford converting a first-half penalty.
And Cooley rolls it into the back of the net.
But in their first hit out since the Paris Olympics, Australia's defence was again exposed.
And Switzerland, the pressure telling.
25th ranked Switzerland, unlucky not to snatch a win at the death.
I was a little bit disappointed with the quality of the goal that we gave away. I thought it was very messy defensively.
Aussie defensive dynamo Dyson Daniels is loving his new life in Atlanta. Daniels scoring a career-high 18 points in the Hawks' win over the Hornets.
Daniels off the glass. What a circuit shot, he hit it.
A scale of 1 to 10, that's a 20.
Josh Giddey stuffed the stats sheet in his second game for the Bulls. 19 points, 6 rebounds and 9 assists in an upset win over the Bucks. With a combined yearly salary of over $800 million, there's no underdogs in this year's Baseball World Series. The New York Yankees led by a run in extra innings in Los Angeles, with 56,000 nervous Dodgers fans on their feet.
Freeman hits the ball to right field. She is gone!
The first walk-off Grand Slam in the 122-year history of the World Series. Mark Gottlieb, 9 News.
Navigating the streets of Surfers Paradise is hard enough. Reversing, near impossible. This is the case with supercar driver Cameron Hill at today's Gold Coast 500. It was Cam Waters who eventually claimed the crown, though. Will Brown forced to wait to close out the championship.
A supreme Cam Waters today.
In Formula One, George Russell has crashed out in practice 2 ahead of the Mexico City Grand Prix. Carlos Sainz was quickest once the track was cleared. Oscar Piastri right behind him in second. And it is 7 days now until the Cup Carnival begins, and as we continue our countdown, number 7, of course, belongs to legendary owner Lloyd Williams. Williams has won 7 Melbourne Cups, beginning with just a dash in 1981. His most recent was Twilight Payment in 2020.
Wonderful thing for Melbourne. You know, it's the homegrown event, isn't it? It's like the grand final.
Now 84, Williams is just as determined to add to his Melbourne Cup haul. There you go, Pete. Not long to go until the Melbourne Cup now.
Looking forward to it. Thank you very much, Nathan. Mimi Becker returns with the weather right now. Mimi, how's the second half of the weekend looking?
Well, Pete, after clear skies today, the cloud is set to move in overnight into tomorrow, and that will help warm things up even more. I'll have the full forecast next. Hello again. It's been a beautiful start to the weekend with plenty of sunshine. This morning was quite chilly though, our coldest October morning in decades, and from a low of 6 degrees, we warmed up to reach 23 in the city. It was an even colder start through the suburbs. Coldstream dropped to just 1 degree, Ringwood, Tullamarine and Rosebud down to 2. Then the mercury climbed with maximums in the high teens and low 20s, while Epping and Tullamarine reached 23. Statewide, it fell below 0 at Rutherglen and through alpine areas, down to 1 degree at Warrnambool and 2 at Ballarat. Throughout the day, it did warm up, though, a maximum of 25 in Mildura, Swan Hill and Horsham, while it reached the high teens across Gippsland. The chilly morning was due to a high-pressure cell with a very dry air mass over Victoria, while you can see some storm activity continuing here across WA and South Australia. And overnight, that trough will move across the state, bringing cloudy conditions to Victoria. Taking a look around the rest of the country, possible shower in Brisbane and a top of 26. 26 in Sydney as well. A top of 21 in Hobart with possible showers. And clear skies over in Perth with a top of 28. For Victoria, a mostly cloudy day, but that extra cloud will help the mercury climb. Maximums range from 19 at Warrnambool to 31 in Mildura, and there is the chance of light showers over central and eastern districts. They're forecast to be patchy across the suburbs too, set to arrive very early in the morning, but nothing more than a millimetre, and we can still expect a warmer day than average. Epping and Tullamarine should reach 26 degrees before a cool change sweeps through in the afternoon. From a low of 13, Geelong can expect a mostly sunny day, a top of 23 degrees. For the city, a partly cloudy day with moderate winds set to reach 24. The southerly change will drop temperatures back on Monday, a top of 17 degrees. A chance of showers on Tuesday, 18, cloudy and 20 degrees on Wednesday, then down to 16 on Thursday with a possible shower or two. 19 on Friday, the showers may hang around, and then it warms up again next weekend, 26 on next Saturday. Overnight, the city should drop to 15 before warming up to 24 degrees around lunchtime. And then we can expect that southerly change to sweep through and the temperature to drop. So it should still be a nice end to the weekend, Pete.
Sounds terrific. Thank you, Mimi. Now, before we go, Amelia Adams has a preview of 60 Minutes.
Thanks, Peter. Tomorrow night.
I don't think you can wake up one day and do something that brutal.
The crime that horrified Australia.
It smacks of hate, it smacks of narcissistic anger and rage.
Investigating the hidden past.
He was unhinged, deranged.
Of the monster who killed Lily James.
You can rot in hell.
Plus, Al Pacino.
That was my debut.
The best in the business.
Man, you're a nutbag. I love it.
That's tomorrow night after the block. Back to you, Peter.
Amelia, thank you. And Melbourne, that's what's news this Saturday. Next on 9, Deb Knight with a current affair. Enjoy your evening and good night.